Hello everyone, welcome to a Star Wars Black Series figure tutorial, and Timmy's showing you all how to make an Imperial Juggernaut pilot. This is the disguise adopted by Din Djarin and the Bill Burr character in the TV series The Mandalorian as they infiltrate the Imperial base. It's a really cool design. It has some homage, some kit bashing to the Imperial Army Trooper design, and also with the Imperial Hover Tank pilot helmet. There's also some other extra details that we're going to go over, but this is a really cool design. First off, I will say this is actually going to be done in partnership with my good friend Outer Rim Traders. In case you don't know, Outer Rim Traders does casting, he does a little bit of modeling. Basically just makes a lot of parts, so this is in conjunction with him. Thank you, he provided me with this kit that I'm showing you guys, and he is awesome. Alright, so let's go over what you're going to need. First off, you are going to need a Han Solo Mim Band from the old Redbox line. Next up, you are going to need a kit. This kit was generously provided to me by Outer Rim Traders, and I'm going to make a tutorial using it. Let's check out what's inside the kit. So first off, we have this hover tank helmet, and it looks great. It is casted from the Black Series Imperial Hover Tank pilot helmet, and it looks perfect. Next up, we have the pistol and the holster. I don't actually know specific which holster this is. It might be Cassian's, but the pistol is a great recast of the Imperial sort of pilot or officer pistol. It comes with a couple of different figures. Looks great. I'm excited to use this one. It's a really clean cast. I think this is the SE-14R. Also in the kit we do have a belt. This belt was actually sent in by me, so I helped make the kit a little bit. This is from the standard Stormtrooper, the new Stormtrooper Black Series figure, and I just sent it in to help him out because I cut it for my own custom. So you, if you buy this kit, will have, in a way, something made by me. This little belt here. So it's perfect, and it exactly matches up with what we need on the figure. And it's already trimmed. I trimmed this from the Stormtrooper belt, so you don't have to do any extra trimming like I did on the original Stormtrooper figure, because normally the belt is one piece with the cod piece. So rather than having to completely destroy a Stormtrooper just to get this belt, you can purchase this kit and you have a perfect cast. And it's like rubber. These things are both rubber, so there's some nice little squishability to them, almost as if it's an official figure. So these are really awesome. Next up we have the head sculpts. I'm not sure if I'm going to get to these today. I'm not the best head painter, and I kind of just want to keep this tutorial short to focus on the hover tank pilot modifications. However, I might revisit these in the future. Here's the Din Djarin head cast. This is a great, honestly a great likeness. Significantly better than the Hasbro one, which I thought looked kind of like Shrek. Let's see if we can zoom in on this bad boy. Yeah, that looks really good. I really like this. And then I think the Bill Burr one's honestly better. I mean, it's actually kind of freaky. If you look at it up close, like that's really good. This is very impressive. This is honestly a bit disturbing how good it looks. So let's put these aside. Let's put all the kits aside. Let's go over the paints and other materials you're gonna need for this figure. Alright, so first of all, I highly recommend some super glue. I really like Crazy Glue. This is the liquid kind, not the gel. The gel kind of sucks. Crazy Glue always bonds pretty much instantly and is awesome. Alright, so now let's talk paints. First of all, you are going to need some sort of gray color. I really like this Vallejo surface primer. This stuff is awesome because of its ability to cling to the figure. I really like that. It's not super watery like a couple of the air paints are. It's a great consistency, so this is a great choice. Next up, you are going to need Vallejo 71.124 United States Air Force Green. This color is pretty close to the color we want. You would just have to tweak it a little bit. It's the best I've been able to find so far, so I'd recommend picking this up to make your life a little bit easier. And then finally, you're going to be needing black. I use Vallejo Air Black. This bottle's pretty messed up. You could also use just regular Vallejo Black. However, if you do want to use a regular model color paint, you are going to need to thin it, either with water or with airbrush thinner. Either of these really work. So just keep that in mind when you do this. And the final thing I will recommend you need is a gloss varnish. You could use Vallejo gloss varnish, or you could use like Citadel gloss varnish. Either way, you are going to need a gloss varnish to make the visor shiny. So I would recommend picking that up. Editor's note, I did forget this. I also highly recommend you have some Vallejo Air Silver. The reason for this is because you are going to want to add some scratches and dings to the metallic armor to get this metallic finish that the original armor has. It'll look weird if your helmet is perfectly clean. So I would recommend getting some of this Vallejo Air Silver in order to do that. Now on the tools, I am going to use an airbrush for this just because I like it. It's quicker, you get a cleaner effect rather than hand painting. It's a complementary tool to a paintbrush. It doesn't replace a paintbrush. There's some things an airbrush can do that a paintbrush can't, and a paintbrush can do that an airbrush can't. However, for this, I am going to be using an airbrush, and that's namely going to be for painting the helmet, the belt, even the holster, just pretty much everything in this set that comes extra, I am going to paint with my airbrush. As far as sealers go, I'm going to recommend 2 sealers in this video. The first sealer is going to be Rust-Oleum's Matte Finish. I really like this matte finish because it's kind of a semi-matte. It's not a complete matte like Krylon is, whereas Krylon, if you try and matte it, it will just look very, very, very matte. This is kind of a nice in-between where it's not super matte that it kind of starts to look a little strange. It's just this nice sort of middle. And then I'm also going to be doing the final matte coat with Tamiya Color TS-80. The reason for this is because this is, I think, a perfect finishing matte. Like, it makes a really nice effect. However, the bottles are kind of small and it's not really worth using this for multiple layers. So we're going to use this Rust-Oleum as kind of an in-between to seal each different sort of step or stage. And we're going to finish it off with this Tamiya sealant. So you don't exactly need to weather this figure. I think you could just leave him as is. However, I do like weathering. So I'm going to use 2 weathering kits. I'm going to be using the Tamiya Weathering Master Kits A and B. These are really cool. You can pick these up at Hobby Lobby, you can pick them on Amazon. These are, I think, the best weathering kits just for figures, for characters. You get a lot of good colors in here, namely the mud is what we're probably going to be using, and the suit color is really good for these figures. So let's keep these in mind. You certainly don't need to purchase these. You don't need to use these to weather. You could just use like brown paint dry brushed, which I did for my original figure. However, we're going to take it up a notch. We're going to kick it up a little bit with the Tamiya weathering kits. Just get a little fancy, you know. Finally, you are going to need a hot glue gun, right here. Here's the one I use. And you're going to need some Vaseline. This is just to make the helmet joint. Classic hot glue and Vaseline helmet joint, as I always do. Alright, let's open them up. Alright, so we have the figure out of the package. We can get rid of some things. These can go. These can go here. We don't need these. Weapon, won't need that. Won't need this a little bit. Won't need the cape. We can take off this helmet. So here we are going to need to remove the head, of course. Don't need a head. There we go, head came off no problem. Put that aside as well with all the things we won't need again. You can go ahead and put this in a box or something. Little extra spare parts piece. Either way, we will not need this again. Let's move on to the next step. Let's cut up the belt a little bit. Zoom in a little bit here. Let's get our X-Acto knife. All we're going to do is we're just going to cut off this central belt piece because we do not need it. It is not on the actual character. So we're just going to take a little X-Acto knife and go right here. Be very careful not to cut off more than you need to. Just cut off the proper amount you need to. Let's go here now. There we go. Then right here. And then we can go along the bottom. Now let's just go back this way. Alright, so once that's done, you should just be able to pop it off. And there we go. Put this aside, you will not need this either. It's a nice little piece if you're going to do a custom later on. Nice little greeble. And the belt we're going to paint is just going to go right there. Alright, so I wasn't originally planning on doing the torso mod for this guy. I kind of wanted to have a little bit of a height difference with Bill Burr and Mando. However, looking at it now, it kind of just looks weird how short his torso is, like the proportions on this Han Solo figure were. And I really like how sort of like athletic the modified torso one is. So I am going to modify the torso on this guy so he looks just as good as Din Djarin. So to do this, we're just going to heat him up with the blow dryer, and we'll see you then. That should be enough. Let's pop him out. And he is now free. There we go. Perfect. So basically all we're going to do is we are just going to sort of drill out this area right here, this little hole here, and then we're going to fill it with hot glue, Vaseline, whatever, so we can have his torso sit a little bit more naturally on the body. Because right now it was just too kind of like hunched over like that, and it looked kind of weird. So let's go ahead and get my drill. Alright, for this guy I am going to be using a 3/8 inch drill bit, and we're just going to drill straight down into this hole right here. Let's hit it. Alright, that should really be all you need to do. It doesn't take too long. Just gonna clean out the extra bits from here using my X-Acto knife. Pretty easy to do here. It's not too difficult. So now that that peg's gone, we can freely put this in here and we can adjust the height to whatever we want. You can actually make him shorter if you wanted to, or you can make him taller. We're gonna make him just a little bit taller just to make those proportions look a bit more normal. I'm gonna use my Mando figure here as a handy dandy reference. As usual, we're gonna get our Vaseline and lather up the joint. That way it does not adhere, the super glue does not adhere to the actual joint itself. Just gonna put it right here around the little torso peg. Don't need a whole lot, just need a light coating over the whole peg. And there we go. Alright, this is looking pretty good, so now we can put this aside and get the hot glue ready to go. Alright, we've allowed our hot glue to sit for a couple minutes, so all I'm going to do now is I am going to prop Han Solo onto his back, just like this, and then we're going to fill up the hole with hot glue and then quickly insert the torso. So let's just put it right here and fill. I would say probably fill about 2/3 of the way up here. Yeah, that looks perfect. Now we could remove the hot glue, get rid of the string that often forms, and then we can get our torso and simply push it into this nice little slop. And then you can manually reposition it. I'm going to position it similar to Mando right here, where it's just going to be a little bit above the belt line, right there. Now we have here, we're just going to hold him up and let him sort of dry like this. I just threw this guy in the freezer for a couple minutes just to speed up the hardening process, and he came out pretty good. However, I think I'm going to give him another little dose. If you don't like exactly how it came out the first time, you can actually make it tighter. Like if it's a little bit too loose, you can make this joint connection tighter, but just put a little bit more hot glue in there. It's a pretty easy thing. The only thing I would say is that you are going to have to re-lube the peg here before you do it again. Otherwise, it will stick, and then you will have a very unfun time. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to take off some of the residual hot glue that sticked to this little peg here, recoat it with Vaseline, and then I'm going to do another hot glue torso, and then let's put in hot glue. There we go, and now let's just do this torso. It should pop in actually this time since we have the first joint here. Yep, it did. And now we can just seat it into our original joint and we'll just let it sort of tighten. I'm going to throw this guy in the freezer again to speed up the process, and we'll come back to him. Alright, just took him out of the freezer and he is done. We have gained a couple extra, I'd say, I don't know, maybe like 3 or 4 centimeters, or sorry, 3 or 4 millimeters. But I think it makes a big difference in terms of how he looks. The arms hang a little bit more naturally where they should on a human. They're not so low as they were on the original Han Solo figure. And just generally, I think the proportions look a lot better. So now this is done, we'll move on to the next step. Alright, so let's start color mixing. Color mixing is generally one of the most daunting parts of any custom, but I think together we can do it. We can navigate the trials. So we're going to start off, I'm going to be mixing in my airbrush. If you don't have an airbrush, you could mix on maybe glass is a good thing to do. If you have a picture frame, it was suggested to me. Really anything can work. A lot of times I'll just mix on cardboard because I am lazy. However, you could easily do anything. I'm going to be mixing in my airbrush. I'm going to be painting in my airbrush. You could probably paint this mix by hand with a regular paintbrush. However, again, airbrush is always just tends to be cleaner, smoother, no paintbrush lines, so I always prefer this. Alright, so we're going to start off with United States Air Force Green. Just going to put a healthy amount of that into here. This is our primary base color. It's the closest thing that we have to the color of the actual figure. So we're going to make this our most used color. There we go. What I like to do whenever I do color mixing is I like to take a small sample of the color and compare it to the figure and see what direction we need to go, lighter, darker, greener, bluer, redder, yellower. So let's just take a little bit on the brush, not a lot, and then we can wipe it off just a little bit, and now let's go to our figure, and we're just going to paint it on and see how it looks. There we go. It's looking a little bit dark, so let's go ahead and add some primer gray. Primer gray is always a great color to add to lighten things up without making it super bright. Just got a couple drops of that, and we'll mix this in. Alright, let's take this out. Just a little bit again. Now let's check it to the figure. Let's zoom in here so you can see what's going on here. Yeah, it's looking a little bit too green. A little bit too green here, so let's add more primer gray. Again, you can wipe off the, you can and should wipe off the paint from the figure. This is just a test, so we don't want to leave that there, otherwise it would look strange. So let's mix in this primer gray again. I think we're getting pretty close here. Only have a little bit on the brush, wipe off here, and now let's check. Ooh, we're getting pretty close here with this green color. Zoom in here. I'm thinking maybe just a tidbit more of primer gray, and then maybe a little bit, like a tiny drop of black, but we are, like I would say, we're right on target right now. So we'll wipe this off, just use our finger, whatever, doesn't matter. Let's add just a tinge more primer gray. That should be enough, and let's mix this. There we go, wipe off. And let's check this out. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Let's test it. So in the show, there's a difference between Din Djarin's armor and Bill Burr's armor. Bill Burr's armor, his right shoulder, his like bicep armor, is not red. It's the same color as his left. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go and we're going to paint over this red. If you want to do a Din Djarin, I would suggest leaving the red. However, if you want to make Bill Burr in the Imperial pilot disguise, then you should absolutely paint over this red. So let's do that. Alright, for this purpose, I'm going to try just hand painting it, seeing how this turns out with the hand painted mix. You could mask this off and airbrush this, however, I think you could also just paint this as well. I don't think it's that big of a deal. Let's zoom in here. There we go. As close as we can go. And let's just repaint this dude. Let's go here. Key is slow and thin. If you ever hand paint like this, you always want to do thin coats. Your worst mistake you could do is try and do a thick coat, like try and paint it all in one go, because then you will end up with a lot of extra paint, a lot of streak lines. So we're just going to go slowly with this guy. We're going to take our time, and we're going to do multiple thin coats over time to really get this armor looking how it should. So don't be alarmed if you start painting and you're like, oh man, this paint is really thin, it doesn't look how I wanted it to. You can do more coats. It's not a big deal. No stress. Pop this arm out a bit so we can paint inside his armpit. Now I flip him over. Looks like our first batch of paint is already kind of dried, so I'm just going to keep going here on this guy. Vallejo paint tends to dry extremely quickly, so you don't really have to spend a whole lot of time sitting around. I'm sure some bottles say that you should wait like 20 minutes or something like that, but really you can just kind of wait like, I don't know, like 2 or 3 minutes, and it tends to dry very quickly. Now you shouldn't handle it, like I wouldn't touch it right now, but you can definitely begin painting over it. Okay, I'm gonna let this sit just for a little bit. I'm gonna walk away, do something else. And in the meantime, we can paint the belt and helmet while we wait for this to dry. As you can see, this mix is actually, I think this is even better than my previous mix. I mean, you can't even really tell that that bicep was repainted compared to the other one. So that's good. We are gonna do another coat later. However, for now, we're just gonna let this guy dry a little bit. Okay, so we have our mix. Just gonna mix this a little bit more. Make sure it's nicely the same consistency throughout. And now let's do the belt first. With the belt, I'm gonna start on the back, and then we're gonna go to the front. Let's put this right here. Let's use my airbrush, turn it on. Alright, here we go. Good tip for airbrush before we start is that whenever you airbrush something, you always want to start off and then pull on or pull up. You never want to start airbrushing directly onto the thing, because oftentimes when you start airbrushing, a big splurt of paint will come out initially and then it'll be constant. Same goes for when you turn it off. When you turn off your airbrush, you want to move it away from whatever you're airbrushing and then release the trigger. Otherwise, it'll like explode onto your thing potentially. So let's start on the back, turn our airbrush on, and get started. There's a good first coat of the belt. I'm just going to pick it up and move it to the side while we let it dry. So I'm just quickly going to compare the belt color to the armor color. It's pretty close, pretty close. However, I do think we need just a drop of black in the mix just to make it a bit darker, because as it is right now, it's just a tiny bit too light. However, the base color is dead on. So let's just add a tiny bit of dark. Use black in this instance. Be very careful whenever you add black, because a lot of times you can easily mess it up if you add way too much. So we're just going to check it out there, and we're going to add a tiny drop right there. That should be all we need. Black is a very easy color to add too much of and then completely pollute your mix. Yeah, that should be good right there. A little black goes a very long way, especially when using light colors. So let's go back, let's add just a little more dark. Let's start off and kind of make sure we get all of the extra light paint out from the bottom. Now we can go back over with the dark. And that already looks a lot closer to, yeah, that looks perfect. That looks exactly like what we want. So I'm very happy with that. Let's do the helmet now. Just going to put my helmet on the tip of my X-Acto knife just so I can move it around, manipulate it without having to worry about touching it with my fingers. All we're going to do now is just the same thing for the belt, just with this nice little helmet. So let's do that. Alright, so I think this helmet is pretty much good to go. I'm going to let it dry. I'm going to give it a second coat, but as of right now, it's looking really good. Let's put it up to the camera. Yeah, let's compare it to the figure color. That is a great match. I'm really happy with that. So now we will go ahead and move on. We're going to let these dry a little bit more. I am going to give the helmet another coat just because there are some spots where I can see it's a little bit thin, like on the back here. Just give it another coat and we'll get ready to put it back on. I'm just going to hold this little guy down with my X-Acto knife while I go and airbrush this. Alright, so there we go. The blaster's now been airbrushed black, and he's good to go. You could probably hand paint this as well, however, airbrushing is always just the best. It's so easy, so quick, and it comes out perfectly. So I'm going to go ahead and put this little blaster to the side, and we will give it a matte coat, and then we will continue on. There we go. Let's start painting. Alright, there we go. This is good to go. We're just going to give it a nice little matte coat as well. And then this guy will sit right here on the armor. I might paint it over with a little bit of a light color, but it's pretty much right there for me. I think that's good enough. You could go maybe like a shade lighter, but I think this will look fine. I'm going to grab a nice small brush, and now we shall paint in these little back details. Don't worry if you paint a bit outside the lines because it's super easy to clean up. I usually just like to keep a Q-tip on hand and you can just wipe the top. Just like that. Go in here a little bit. Wipe some of that away. Alright, now we're good to go. Got those paint details painted in. Now we are also going to paint in the belt right here because the belt needs to be painted in too. I'm going to go ahead and add some nice weathering to this guy while I'm here. I'm going to use this dark color we just made. I'm just going to do a little bit of dry brushing using just the same brush we've been using for mixing. Just going to clean it off and do some dry brushing. Concept behind dry brushing is that you get your brush as dry as possible and then you use a dark color, or it could be the light color as well, and you just want to get a little bit of paint on there and you want to wipe a bunch of the paint off, and now you're just going to, once you have that nice little effect right there, you're just going to hit the figure with this dry brush. This is a good way to weather a lot of times. I like using it a lot. You can kind of rub it in there. Our goal is just to kind of create some wear and tear on the figure. What I would say is definitely don't like overdo it, don't get too crazy with it, but this is a pretty good tool to gives your figure some texture and your figure some weathering where the original kind of didn't have it. Especially with the matte coat on, it really helps the dry brushing to stick. And I like to rub it in a little bit, just give the armor a little bit of texture. Do some dry brushing here on the kind of in the crevices. It's a great place to hit with a little bit of dry brush. Go on top as well. Wipe that off. Let's get in here if we can. Wipe off. There we go. Getting all those cracks. Alright, there we go. So now the new armor has a similar level of dark weathering compared to the previous one. Don't forget to do the helmet and the belt as well. Just gonna go get a little bit of paint on this brush, make it a nice dry brush, and let's do some weathering here. I'm gonna try and just go for the cracks here. Then we're just gonna wipe away quickly. There we go. We'll go in here. Some little details on the back of the helmet. Make sure you get all up in there, and then quickly wipe away before it's time to dry on top. I'll do it here as well. Wipe away, wipe away, wipe away. Again, because we have that matte clear coat on is what it's allowing this to stick so well. Nice, so we're getting those little details same as on the previous helmet, just by doing a little bit of dry brushing. You can do some dry brushing on top too. Then wipe that in. Now let's get kind of in these crevices here where like dirt would naturally kind of collect. We'll go there, and we'll go here, and then we'll just wipe away the surface. Cool, 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 cool. Let's do here as well. Wipe away the top. Alright, it's looking pretty good. I kind of want to hit it with a little bit of a darker dry brush here. I think this is good, but I want to just get a little bit darker in some of these areas. Define it a little bit more, so I'm just going to add a little bit of, I'm just going to take my dry brush mixture, put it right here, and I'm just going to add a little bit of black to this. Oops, that's probably too much. It's okay. Let's add some more of our dry brush here. Alright, so I added some more black to the dry brush mixture just because I want to make this a little bit darker, just a teeny bit. So let's go here. Wipe away, wipe away, wipe away. Let's do here as well. Wipe away. Use my Q-tip. Let's go inside of here. I've got to paint this little detail. And this one. Right here on the side. Got our Q-tip, wipe away the top. We also got to get in here as well. These little like kind of vents on the side of the helmet right there. And here, and we will just again wipe away the top. Looks good. And now we will let's do the bottoms of these helmets too. Let's do these details as well. So just a little bit in here, a little bit in here. Let's do some in the middle. There we go. And now let's do the little frown, because Juggernaut pilots are sad. We'll once again wipe away the top, so only what we painted in the crevice remains. Just like that. Sweet. Just going to go back over a couple places, like these little lines back here. I want those to be a bit darker. Wipe away. Gonna go in here a bit. Let's also hit the belt while we're at it. Just gonna dry brush some more on here. Just gonna quickly kind of go over this. Just gonna kind of rub this in. And there we go. A little bit more, why not? Sweet, alright. That should be pretty good. Alright, now we can go ahead and super glue on the belt. That's pretty easy. Just gonna put them right there. Get our super glue. I like to put a little bit, let's start on the figure first. Let's put some here on the edges. Right here. Then on the actual belt itself, we can just go here. And here. They'll put some on the bottom right there. And now we should just be able to put it on here. We're just going to line it up. And press down. Once you have it in position. A benefit of raising the torso is that it does give more space for the belt to sit, which then helps the belt to look a little better. So yeah, I think this is pretty smart to do this. I like doing that. Now let's go add the holster while we have the holster here. Just going to put a dab of super glue right there on the part that attaches the belt. Going to flip them around and just attach the holster right there. Just going to press it down for a little bit. I like to kind of do it like back into the side, I think is good. It's a good area to put it. Just press it and allow it to mold into there. You'll be good to go. For this coat I am going to be using Tamiya color, the TS-80, to get that nice flat look. Alright, so now that the matte coat is done on the figure and he's been kind of sealed, let's do a little bit of, I'm going to say, brown weathering for the boots. I'm actually just going to use some mud brown. It's my favorite color ever to use for mud, right here. This isn't on my list, but I think you should use it. 71037 mud brown. Going to put a little bit there, and we are just also going to dry brush as well. Again, more dry brushing. Just going to add a little bit of mud to his boots. Again, dry brushing. And we're just going to go here on the boot. Just kind of add just a little bit of brown here. Alright, so we're done with the mud effect. He has some really nicely weathered boots in the bottom, nice and dirty. Now we're going to go and add a little bit of the silver I was talking about earlier. We're going to just add some silver highlights to his armor to give it that metallic look, give it some chipping, and show that it has, you know, seen some wear and tear, because we don't want to leave the armor just flat. Just use a little bit of Vallejo Air Silver. You really don't need a lot of this stuff. A little bit goes a long way. Again, we're going to be dry brushing. This stuff I would say you want to dry brush a lot. Gonna go here. Let's go on the ridges of these ammo boxes right here. Let's go on the other shoulder right here, this other bicep. Add some little chips here and there. Just some dings. Alright, let's go ahead and paint in the black visor on the helmet finally. Just going to put a little bit of Vallejo model color black here, and I am going to add a good bit of water to this, probably about like a third of it to water, because it is very clumpy as it is, and we need this to be a little bit more watery, so that way it'll spread nicely on the helmet. Otherwise it'll get all clumpy, we'll see paint streaks, and it won't be very fun, it'll look ugly, and I'll be sad. So let's go here, and now let's go ahead and paint this bad mama. Let's put this right up to the camera so you guys can see everything. Let's get a little more. Don't have too much paint on our brush at one time ever. Let's flip it over, go here, get some more paint. And there we go. Just gonna add a little bit of, there we go, a little bit of detail. We lost a little bit of some of the texture right there, but now we got it back. Alright, now that is looking pretty good. Alright, so now the helmet is done, mostly with all the painting. We're just going to let it sit for a little bit until it dries, and then we're going to go and put the gloss varnish over the visor and make it nice and shiny. So let's go and put this aside. Alright, so upon some testing, I did find out that the helmet is literally just a couple millimeters too short. A little shy of being able to fit onto the neck joint, so I'm just going to use a 5/16 inch drill bit just to make this neck peg a tiny bit deeper. Let's go ahead and get into it. Alright, so after literally just that couple seconds of dremeling, the head fits on perfectly. All I have to do now is just make the joint. But yeah, I would recommend dremeling. You could try drilling, maybe sanding, just something to get this head to fit. If you really don't have any of those, you could again use like an X-Acto knife to kind of whittle away here. But I recommend dremeling if you can, because it allows you to preserve the neck for the future. So here we go. I am going to add a light metallic wash to the SE-14R, just to add some little interest to it as a weapon, because right now it looks kind of boring without a wash. Just a nice little dry brush. Alright, I think that's pretty good. Worthy of Bill Burr. And then this pistol should slot right into the holster. Yes, very cool. I like it. That worked perfectly. Love it when that works out. Alright, so the helmet is done drying. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to apply a little bit of gloss varnish to the visor, and that's going to be it for the helmet. Here it is right here, Vallejo gloss varnish. Again, Citadel has a similar gloss varnish. A lot of different companies make gloss varnishes. This is just a paintable gloss effect, and it's awesome. I always use it for visors. Something I see a lot of customizers mess up is that they will leave their visors like very matte. They won't paint a gloss varnish on them, and it ends up looking very strange. However, if you use the secret tool of gloss varnish, your visors will always look impeccable. So, without further ado, let's paint this bad boy up. Okay, just gonna get a bit of gloss varnish on the brush. Thin, we want to have thin layers of this, because if you paint it on too heavily, it will clump and it'll look weird. And now we just paint it onto the visor. That's literally all you have to do. It's super easy. No sweat. Just again, thin. You don't want to paint too much on at once, or else there'll be really obvious streak lines. But yeah, I think that's it. It's done. Let's assemble him now. Alright, so now that all this is done, let's go ahead and do the old Vaseline and hot glue trick. Just put a little bit of Vaseline on the ball peg, and that's really about it. Okay, putting some Vaseline on here. Just a nice thin layer, not too much. But making sure the entire peg is covered. Let's get your helmet situated upside down and fill it up with nice, wonderful hot glue. That should be enough. And now we will get our helmet and our head and we will combine them into one. Here we go, and push, 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 push. Sweet. Now let's go throw them in the freezer for a little bit and see how it turns out. Alright, so here are the finished guys. On the left is, of course, Din Djarin in his Imperial disguise, and on the right is Mayfeld. Din Djarin has that red armband, and Mayfeld, of course, just has that as the same Mud Trooper green color. Overall, I'm really happy that it turned out, and I hope this tutorial helped you guys. These are some really cool figures, really cool characters as well, and the figures definitely do them justice, and I'm so excited to pose these guys around, put them on my Mandalorian shelf, and I hope this tutorial helped you guys out. Alright, until next time. Peace.